Hey guys, Kyle here. So, just before the show starts, I wanted to mention our Patreon. You can pay us $1 a month as a thank you, as a tip. You can pay $2 a month to get access to one of our bonus content shows, episodes 2 days early, and a secret Discord chat where all of our Patreon donors get to go and hang out and talk with us directly. Then there's a $5 tier that you can donate to get access to a whole bunch more content. We have multiple bonus episodes on there, so please check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We don't advertise, we don't make money, so check it out and throw some money if you think that would be cool. Thanks. Welcome to It Gets Weird, our comedy show where we explore the unusual, the unbelievable, and the unexplained to try and make your world a little weirder. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Niall, and I think it's really time to look back at the year that what's gone down this year, all of the stuff that we maybe the things that you haven't quite finished that you thought you were going to.
Time to reflect.
Reflect on the year as it's come to pass. And by that I do mean really take a look at how many movies you've watched this year, because that's really the only important thing that matters.
Yeah, we gotta
try to get that count up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, try to get that count up into at least the triple digits, and see, just really, and also go out and go to the fucking cinema. Go ahead and just like walk up to the counter at AMC, and just say, I'm gonna slide you like $30, and I'm just gonna I'm just gonna kind of hang out today. Don't worry about it.
Here's a little something for you to look the other way for a couple hours, and throw in some Skittles.
I am going to come back for just like one part of the same movie every time it plays today, and kind of bounce around between theaters a little bit, but I won't be disruptive. I'll be quiet, I won't get in the way. But I do need to see. I wish I could think of something that is in a movie that's in theaters. I haven't seen any movie that's still in theaters.
I happen to know that they brought back One Battle After Another.
Oh.
And I have a group of friends who haven't seen it who are going to go see it this week. So
I am going to watch
next week.
I am going to make sure I see Benicio del Toro say a couple small beers for every single showing of that movie.
Absolutely. Really, I really loved that movie. If it's back in theaters already somehow, people should get out and check that one out. I like it. I know that I got my movie watching numbers up from the year previous. For whatever reason, 2024 was like a bad year for my movie watching numbers. This year, I remember like checking a few months ago and being like, oh, I watched more stuff this year than I did the year before. It's always nice to engage with more art, and I feel like I really accomplished that this year. Not just movies. I read a lot more too. So.
Yeah, my number, it's not great. It's 148. I got to triple digits.
That's like probably 100 more than me though.
Oh, okay.
Like
cool. Then I'm doing okay.
Like I watched a good number of movies this year for me, but I don't think I've ever watched more. Maybe that's okay. Maybe that's.
I guess that does average out to like one every 2 days. So I guess I am doing like no, it's like one every a little. It's between one every 2.
You're
and
doing
3
endgame
days,
numbers.
I'm doing okay. Yeah.
Maybe my goal for next year will be. I don't know if I can hit 100 movies, but maybe I'll try. I've been.
What you got to do is like anytime you have like a day where you have no plans, you got to just like watch 3 or 4 movies.
Sure.
If you do that a couple times, you'll goose those numbers up pretty quick.
I have been, like I said, I've been reading a lot more. I've read a ton this year, which I was very happy about. But I think, it would be kind of fun to complement reading with some movie watching too. And I've been playing more video games than I wanted to this year. I hate to admit it. So my suggestion, dear listener, is on top of checking out a good movie, reflecting on your movie numbers, maybe also just reflect a little bit on your sins this year. If you want to find yourself in the good book when our Lord comes a knocking, you're going to want to make sure that you've you've sort of tallied up I don't know how the sin stuff works in Christianity. This is all based on a guess by me. But
so
go ahead and reflect on
supposedly,
those.
the way there's a scale in heaven in which your sins are placed, and you have to, see if it balances out.
Gotcha.
Your good and poor deeds, and so you can.
Okay, then that goes hand in hand. You watch the most morally good movies you can, and each good movie, morally speaking, will up those points and tip those scales.
Really make sure that all the art you're consuming is moral, and definitely doesn't challenge any preconceived notions.
Right. This would mean that you can't. So here's some rules to help.
Nothing
you out.
yucky.
Nothing yucky. No sex, please. No sex. I think that's
Violence is okay.
Violence we can do. Violence. Yeah. We love violence. Yeah. Speaking of violence, we got an email this week.
Oh, hell yeah.
I think maybe not particularly violent. But I take emails as a type of violence. Even though we've also established that we eat them. But,
yeah, we do eat them. But I think there is a kind of a middle point between food and violence, which is like really spicy or things that upset your tummy. So like this, emails are sustenance, but they also do make you violently shit.
Yeah, they will. So, yeah, I should say, and this is going to maybe drive some people out there wild. Some of these emails have given me diarrhea, and I'm not going to tell you which ones. Yeah. It's probably not the ones you're thinking. So try to unlock that cryptic message, folks. Here's what the email says. This is from John, but not this person makes note that it's not our regular Weird John. So the email says, "Feel free to read this on the show. Hello, weird guys. I'm just another member of the John Legion. I have a thank you and 2 short almost encounters with the weird. So first, the thank you. I'm the GM of my TTRPG group, and recently I began working on the plot of an alien invasion campaign, and I've been using the knowledge you two have shared over the years to help me assemble a roster of aliens who aren't racist / anti-Semitic dog whistles."
A surprisingly hard task.
Very difficult, so I'm glad that we were able to put in that work for you. While some people, in parentheticals, cowards, might say that the exclusion of adrenochrome-drinking reptilians or tall whites would limit your ability to put together a fearsome force of extraterrestrials, I say it gives you the freedom to be way more weird and memorable. I like that.
I do too.
I look forward to having my players fight against a horde of Fresno nightcrawlers, or a task force of Kofu entities, or maybe even a giant Falkville Metal Man mech. Falkville Metal Man mech is it's like cellar door. It's the most beautiful phrase in the world.
We reference that so much.
We do.
Everyone like Donnie Darko, like, yeah. All right.
Well, that sounds amazing, and I'm so happy for you. And
Let us know how that goes.
We could do that for you. They go on to say, "As for my encounters, once when I was a child, between 6 and 8 years old, I was camping with my grandpa in Arkansas when one night I was awoken by a strange rustling and snorting sound. When I looked around, there was a huge beast's head poking into the window of our cabin. While I could claim it was a Bigfoot or the Ozark Howler, it was not some mythical cryptid, but instead a bear that had smelled our Chef Boyardee dinner and came by to investigate." That's fucking terrifying.
Yeah, that's horrifying.
I'm scarred by the concept of bears in the wilderness because we went camping as a family one time, and then a week later we saw news that the camping spot that we had stayed at the week previously, a family was straight up killed on that site.
Wow.
That bear. So
okay.
And then also my cousins one time played a trick on me and my sibling when we were in the mountains in Colorado, where they were going around outside our cabin and like growling and howling and snarling like a bear to scare us. And we all were when I was very young when this happened, but I heard that noise coming outside my cabin and I was like, okay, I'm dead. I've died. This is where my life ends.
Sure.
there's a bear here and it's gonna kill me.
I mean, I'm sure that there are animals that would amount to this, but waking up to a bear would be one of the most horrifying things. Like, they're fucking scary. Like, while it wasn't a Bigfoot, while it wasn't any of our favorite furry friends, it is instead a much more real life threat.
I think. Yeah. The email ends with them saying this. My other encounter was from a couple weeks ago. I was driving home from work when I saw a UFO in the distance. It took me a second to focus my eyes on the UFO, and before I could tell my husband to get out his phone to record it, I realized that I wasn't looking at an alien craft, but a plane that was perfectly in profile. Maybe some people would have had these experiences and convinced themselves that it was a cryptid and an alien, but I find the mundane truth to be more interesting and humorous. Hey, well, that's a nice little email. Thank you very much, John. I think we've definitely talked about seeing UFOs before.
Yeah, there's a whole, well, here, we'll plug this. If you dig back far enough on the Patreon, one of the first episodes we did there was Yumi, Garrett.
Was
it just the three of us?
I think it was just the three of us at the time, yeah.
Doing a personal experiences episode where I had more ghost stuff than anything else.
Everybody's stories freak me the fuck out, like the way you tell that story freaked me out. But we've talked about like our UFO stories and a couple paranormal experiences or what we thought were paranormal at the time. So anyways, really early on in the Patreon, patreon.com/itgetsweird. Go ahead and check it out.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for the email. Much appreciated. This is our final episode in a way. On Martin Cannon.
We're wrapping things up, guys. It's been a hell of a run.
It's been a good run. There's nothing else to talk about after this one. We hit all of it. Martin Cannon and the Controllers. So if you haven't listened to the last two episodes, I highly recommend just listening to those. Otherwise, this will be confusing. This is a three-parter. I don't know what to tell you if you're here without having heard those. I also wanted to I just wanted to say that this will be, despite all the jokes we just made, this will by no means be the last time we jump into the Canonverse, which is what I'm calling it, because I'm now working on setting up a TV show deal with the new Netflix HBO streaming package that's coming out. Sure. So I will be in charge of the Canonverse. Martin Cannon has not been consulted.
We're gonna do HBNet and just try to get in touch with it. That's such a niche joke. What is now Access TV, which is where fucking Impact was. What used to be called a service called HDNet, and so never mind. Go ahead. Sometimes I make a joke that like isn't funny unless you know a very specific thing. But then it's not worth explaining the very specific thing. It's whatever.
I completely understand. I do that shit.
It's not interesting.
So, anyways, there's a lot to talk about still. And I want to give a warning up front. I'm going to briefly discuss some really unpleasant stuff in this episode. There's some violence and torture, which you probably expect at this point. I will also have to talk about sexual assault in this episode, so just a heads up. So, without further ado, let's begin by talking about the military and the applications of mind control.
Okay.
Again, this is all the stuff that Cannon has established up to this point. In the section that we're going to get into, it starts with him recounting a regression hypnosis session that he got to attend. What a lot of the back half of, not back half, but like this back portion, especially when he starts relaying stories, a lot of it is just stuff that he learned from talking to abductees or something like that. And a lot of the names are withheld. I don't know if he's ever gone on the record about some of these stories. I know that there was like one thing that in an interview that I was watching where he was like, that this person's dead, and it's like so many decades after the fact. I think I can talk about this one thing now. So a lot of this I don't have names for you is basically what I'm getting at. And you kind of have to just take canon at his word on a lot of these. So he gets to attend this regression hypnosis session, and that's what he's talking about. And he says that this was, a self-proclaimed UFO abductee that was being hypnotically regressed. He does acknowledge quite a bit the problem of confabulation with hypnotic regression. Like, I feel like Bud Hopkins has been one of our big targets in that area, but this is a problem with like Leo Sprinkle and like the major hypnotists who have worked with UFO abductees. There is a very big problem in that you will then kind of create the story in the person that you are hypnotically regressing. Mm-hmm. And it will sort of conform to the hypnotist's beliefs, which is like interesting to think about, especially after everything we've established about hypnotism in the last 2 episodes too.
Yeah.
So the detail that Canon does get into, that he makes note of, is that this abductee, while they were under hypnotic regression, recalled a memory of their brain being operated on. Which I can't even begin to imagine that scenario where like somebody puts you under hypnosis and a memory comes back to you of somebody operating on your brain. But that's what he's saying. And what this brain operation was for was unclear, but notably, it was being performed by humans and not aliens.
Okay.
So this abductee is like, I have a memory in here of humans poking and prodding my brain. Surgical style.
Was this during missing time of a UFO abduction?
They don't say that. The impression that I get from this story is that this was just something that was dredged up during hypnosis. And
Okay.
I don't think it's like specifically like this happened during the abduction. Maybe that's what it was, and maybe I misunderstood, but I don't think that's what it was, because he says that this operation, in the abductee's recounting of it through this hypnosis, was being done in a named specific veterans hospital in California. So
Okay.
it where it fits into the abduction experience, I don't quite know. This was uncovered. And Cannon says here that, again, take his word for it, but he has been told about this exact hospital before in other cases, except those cases were people who believed themselves to be victims of a mind control experiment, not UFO abductees.
Interesting. The paths cross.
There is this thing here where, and like, we maybe won't have time to get into it in this episode because it has to do with another topic also, but there is this discussion of MK Ultra victims, potentially. The idea that maybe MK Ultra victims walked into UFO groups thinking that their experience had to do with UFOs, but not realizing that they were a victim of these, bizarre experiments.
Sure.
So here's where it's going to get a little hard to, a little alarming. Cannon jumps into the story of one of the mind control victims that he's talked to, and here's what he says. One of these claimants, a former Navy SEAL who undertook numerous dangerous missions in Vietnam, favorably impressed me with the wealth of detail in his story. This individual, I've taken to calling him the Trained SEAL, had received specialized combat training at a military base in California. He claims that at one point during this training, he was drugged, hypnotized, possibly placed under some form of electronic control, and subjected to the extremes of pain, pleasure, operant conditioning. One peculiar detail of his story concerns the reward aspect of the conditioning. When properly when properly acquiescent, he was given unlimited sexual access to a woman who the seal believes, who the seal claims was herself the victim of brainwashing. When you read this part, there's a little note that you can go read where Cannon says about this particular story, quote, "A mutual friend described for me an incident in which the former SEAL, mistakenly perceiving a threat, almost instantly felled and nearly killed a man twice his size. Whatever the truth of my informant's other statements, he certainly has received advanced combat training." So, again, kind of have to take his word. But the idea here is that, also, like, whenever he brings up the pain-pleasure operant conditioning thing,
yeah,
It reminds me of how I was reading in Kinzer's book, Poisoner in Chief, how they would constantly subject people to extreme, like, upper, I'm forgetting exactly what drug concoctions they were, but they would basically be drugs that would take you down, like, way the fuck down, and then they would, like, immediately dose you with a heavy dose of, like, something that brings you way up, and just constantly, like, have you going back and forth between these conditions. That's
like stretching out a rubber band. Like, they're going from zooming between extents to fucking wear you out. That's wild.
Yeah.
Like, anytime you hear about, like, pain pleasure stuff, it's just like, so how close did Clive Barker get it with Hellraiser? Like, are they using a bunch of fish hooks through the fucking skin and everything? Like, what are we talking about here?
I don't know. I mean, I know that when you look at the early days of MK Ultra stuff, people were, like, literally hooked up to like, electrodes, right, that they could shock you with. That there's a bunch of different shit like that, but I don't know. Like, this is the thing, is this story is, you have to take his word for it, and it's non-specific about how that stuff went down, right? So let the mind wander, I guess, or don't, because that would probably be terrible.
Yeah.
So
I'll just start imagining saw traps. Like, that's about where we're at
basically.
Here.
But it did make me think of Hellraiser. Yes, pain and pleasure together. So Cannon jumps from this story and explains how he had previously interviewed a quote-unquote prominent abductee in SoCal who gave him some extremely strange details about an incident in her life that sort of match up with this SEAL's story. So he brings up these stories to be like, I heard this story here and then this story here, and these people don't know each other, and they're awfully similar. Yeah. Cannon describes her talking about this incident as if she was compelled to describe it. So he talks about her like her saying all this to him was a compulsion. This abductee told Cannon that she'd had a love affair in her younger years with a young soldier stationed at a military base near her family's home. She remembers almost nothing about how this all transpired, not even the soldier's name, but apparently one day this soldier just started living at her family's house with her, but she has no memory of how or why this happened, who this person actually was, other than they were in a deep romantic relationship together. And she even claims that she was not attracted to this soldier, but nonetheless felt, quote, compelled to become intimate with him. And even describes, she even describes becoming obedient to him. And she says that this was something that she felt was out of character for herself. And apparently her parents would not discuss this part of her past with her. Like, she would try and talk with them about it, and they would become uncomfortable and not talk about it. Cannon then claims
that stuff's always so sinister. Yeah. Like, is that implying the parents were in on it? Were they? Or is that implying the parents were also under some sort of conditioning to avoid talking about it? Like, I know that you don't know it, but it just seeds this question where it's like, how anytime something like this comes up, which I know we're taking all of this at the word, but it's just like, how far does this thing reach? You know?
Yeah.
Like, how many people have this shit going on?
Yeah.
If we're taking it at all to be true.
The effect that that the controllers had on me is, it's sort of like, okay. You remember how, like, we were kind of just, like, very, you know, we're reading all these stories about UFOs, and we're like, wow, it's so crazy, all these stories, so weird, haha, what fun. And then we learned about the story of Paul Benowitz. And that causes you to then look back on things that you read about and go, hold on a second, what the fuck was this actually? That's exactly what this kind of has also done for me.
Because now, like, there are the various UFO cases. It's like, was this MK Ultra? Like, was this somebody that had tests done on them, and then the UFO community, through whatever, had basically grafted it onto aliens? You know?
Yeah, I mean, is the UFO phenomenon, like the ultimate paranoid question, is the UFO phenomenon made up whole cloth? Like
to cover secret torture stuff?
And now I'm not saying that that's what I absolutely believe, but those are the kinds of questions that start coming up when you read this stuff. I personally, if I had to, like, plant a flag, I wouldn't say it's made up whole cloth, but I would say it certainly seems to be heavily compromised.
It's a good
over
cover.
Decades. Yes. This abductee's parents were not comfortable talking about it with her. And then Cannon claims that this abductee knows that this soldier would eventually move on to do covert ops stuff in Vietnam. So Cannon then sort of has this admission where he's like, this, you know, it could all be, quote, a young person's psychosexual development, which is never smooth. And so this could all maybe be some weird, uncomfortable moment in this person's life, maybe. But he does find that some of the elements that have been established, this is sort of interesting for what he's trying to talk about. And namely, he points out the sudden shift in personality of the abductee to suddenly becoming this obedient, you know, I'm going to use a term that we used in another mind control related series of episodes, but there's the sort of sex kitten.
Yeah.
Which is... I'm assuming you remember that was from the Monarch mind control stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I give even less... I have an even more of a grain of salt for that than all of this, to be completely honest.
But it's like...
But it's a just, pattern in the discussion, you know what I mean?
You kind of get... I mean, here's the thing. You and I are going back and forth about this, and we're talking about these things, and at some point you kind of sit here and you kind of realize, I kind of get how Martin Cannon was like, maybe I shouldn't have put this out in the world. Because even you and I, having done 460 some episodes of a podcast where we're dealing with treading the waters of this stuff and coming out relatively unscathed, even we start having conversations while this is happening about the truth of these things, and there are people who are far less prepared for it than us.
Yeah, that's the thing. So I sympathize with Martin Cannon in a lot of ways, I think. So he goes on and says, so the personality shift, like I mentioned, that was one of the things that he thought was interesting, because we've established that that possibility with the other mind control stuff in the other episodes. But he also says, you know, there's periods of missing time, missing memory, things like that. Sure. And he concludes by saying this: could the trained SEAL have been right? Was there this group of hypno-programmed soldiers conducting particularly hazardous missions? Do they have this... I hate this, but he's like, do they have this ladies' auxiliary of hypnotized camp followers? It's so creepy. It's such a fucking creepy idea. But
it's the CIA of... it's CIA-ifying comfort, women. It's fucking sucks.
Well, and like, you also think like okay, I established in the last episode the hypnosis murders, and how one of the things that the hypnotist convinced this guy to do, listen to part 2 to get what I'm talking about here. The hypnotist convinced this guy to not only go in and try and rob a bank and end up like killing somebody over it, but the other thing that gets mentioned in that story that is is that the hypnotist also was using the hypnotism to convince this guy to get his girlfriend to have sex with him.
Yep.
So that element also recurs in these stories. And yeah, I was thinking of, we did a couple episodes forever ago at this point on monarch mind control. And in that, I remember you talking, like, there's these sort of, like, people get, like, it's so fucked up, but people get, like, grouped in these different categories of, like, what kind of a suggestible subject they can be for their, you know, Illuminati controllers.
Yep.
And one of those categories was, like, the sex kitten. The person who just, like, at a command can become, you know, your... Yeah. You can... Yeah. It's pretty awful. So, anyways, to continue this thread of military mind control subjects, Cannon brings in some more examples. He brings up this story where Vietnam vets were surveyed about inexplicable lapses in memory and or strange behavior modification techniques during their service. He's talking about some work that was put in on this survey. And one of the eerier responses came from an Air Force vet who he just calls David, who I guess spent 4 years in Vietnam, but claimed that all he remembered during that time was, quote, having fun, skin diving, laying on the beach, collecting shells. It never dawned on me until later that I must have done something while I was in the service. And so Cannon points out that this sounds very much like one of those screen memories he described. Which I think we brought up in part 2, where, like, you have a memory placed over, you know, your actions. So maybe you're out there, you know, killing people in Vietnam or whatever, it's subjected to Jacob's Ladder style shit.
Yep.
But then they put this memory over it that you just, you know, had a great time on the beach. But this guy David also claims to have had a girlfriend that was, quote unquote, assigned to him. Whose name he can't remember, despite having been close with her during that time. So again, it sounds like the other story. And then Cannon cites this guy named Lieutenant Commander Thomas Nerritt, a scientist who worked at the U.S. Naval Hospital at the NATO HQ in Naples, Florida. And apparently Nerritt told on himself a bit during a lecture in Oslo. I don't know whether this was like him being like a whistleblower or just like not realizing that he shouldn't have been talking this much, because he apparently admitted to having done what Cannon describes as straight-up Clockwork Orange-style torture on recruits at Naples.
Okay.
They literally strapped to a chair with their eyes forced open. Shit.
Yeah.
Unlike the movie, however, these test subjects would not become violence repulsed, but instead they would become violence positive, quote, taught to accept and enjoy bloodshed, to view it with equanimity.
So it is interesting, like, how conspiracy theorists really love to talk about Eyes Wide Shut and The Shining. But that one doesn't get brought up.
Clockwork Orange doesn't get brought up as often. That's a fair point. That's a good point. I mean, and to be fair, like, Clockwork Orange is like a rough watch. Like, it's a bit of a painful movie. And, you know, I feel like at least Eyes Wide Shut is more fun for the conspiracy types. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, here it is laid out. And then, of course, you can go down the whole rabbit hole of like, oh, well, they murdered Stanley Kubrick because of what he did. He hit it in The Shining.
It is kind of potent in that way, for sure.
That shit, all these years later, that shit's like so quaint now. Because, like, we talked about The Shining stuff and all that, like, maybe in the first year of the show. And
it's really fun to think back to, like, how little we knew when we started.
Yeah.
Like, things seemed so crazy, where now it's like, oh yeah, it's another one of those. Okay, what's next?
Yeah. So this guy Namit, he then claims that these men who went through the Clockwork Orange torture would then just be placed into embassies around the world to act as, quote, hitmen and assassins. Supposedly, after reporters started yapping about this story, Nerritt would have, you know, backed down from his claims, and he would say that he'd only been speaking theoretically about all this stuff. And Canon says, okay, but if that's true, why had you originally described all this as an ongoing behavioral modification program?
Yeah, that's a fair question.
This, like, it's something that I have been learning a little bit about, and a pattern that's been pointed out to me, is you will find these whistleblower types who come out and say something fucking crazy, such as, we did mind control torture to soldiers and then turned them into psychic assassins and put them in embassies around the world.
Yeah.
And then, like, once news starts to spread and people start talking to that person, that whistleblower, who, you know, is a military man, he's a former CIA agent, whatever, then the story starts to crumble. Mm-hmm. And the credibility of the person starts to fall apart. And again, I go back to, regardless of whether or not this is true, what does putting this story out there do? Like, if any of it's true, that's crazy. If it's completely false, that would also kind of make sense because of what we've established about, you know, how these operations might function, or just, like, think of the limited hangout. So it's very weird, and it's so confusing and stupid sometimes. And I don't mean to belabor that point, but it's, you know, you start to notice it more when you think about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Cannon also throws some other horrors out. He brings up, apparently there's a scientist who developed a way to use ELF waves to make somebody just remotely vomit.
Sure.
He points out that
one, that doesn't, okay. I don't mean to keep interrupting you,
no,
but that
ahead.
one doesn't seem that hard. Like, because
I think this one's real, sort of like the bowl that was programmed to stop charging.
Because, like, extremely low frequencies can have an effect on the human body, and everyone who's been to, like, a live music venue with pretty decent subwoofers understands this, and this is a more potent, even more powerful version of that, lower frequencies. And your stomach does get jostled by that shit. Mm-hmm. So it like, I don't know, it's not a big point here, but, like, that one, there's certain times that I feel like I should just be like, that one seems reasonable. Like, out of everything we're talking about, that one feels like something that might actually be real.
Can you ever, like, you could have never anticipated the level of kismet your knowledge of, like, sound waves was going to be when we both decided, let's discuss conspiracies in a public setting.
Yeah, I thought it was just good. It was helpful because I already had microphones, but instead it turned into me having to remember, a bunch of random shit.
To be clear, this is what Niall went to school for. This is your professional what's the word I would use? This is your purview.
Yeah.
Cannon points out that yes, these details are all very gory and unpleasant, but consider that abductees will often report being shown a screen by their abductors with stress-inducing images and videos. Now, the people who underwent this torture, the Clockwork Orange style torture, were shown the violence on the screen. Mm-hmm. And that was part of the way that they were programmed to, like, be into violence, right? So this is a thing that, if you think about it, it's like, oh my God, I have read so many stories of abductees who have been presented with images on a screen. But what I would add, so there's definitely stories of abductees where it's like, I was shown unsettling or stressful things, right?
Yeah.
I would just add that I've read, I think, more accounts that involve aliens showing an abductee something like good or pleasant on a screen, mm-hmm. or more, I think most often, something innocuous and strange, like something that you don't really know why it's being shown to them, but it feels like sort of value neutral.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what that amounts to, but
a lot of times I feel like they show either their home planet or us. Like they'll just like show the Earth and like
Yeah,
talk
that's true
about
sometimes too. Yeah.
It's a anyway. There's like you do get a lot of that kind of stuff. So maybe that's part of the blanket memory. It's easier to just change for the blanket like what was on the screen as opposed to
Maybe
whole cloth changing everything. You know, like, because I feel like for a blanket memory to stick, you kind of have to graft over the parts that are already there. I don't know shit about memory, so this is probably all bullshit and just movie logic. But movie logic would dictate that it's easier if they keep the shape of the things and just replace the details, as if you're keeping the model but getting rid of the wrap.
Right.
And so, you turn the humans into aliens, you turn the black site into a UFO, and you turn the horrifying shit on screen into visions of a peaceful, far-off planet.
And just, you also just have to think.
Sure.
About
No, I don't. I never have to think,
No,
Kyle.
I guess, sorry, I didn't quite finish the sentence, but that's totally fair. I understand. You definitely don't. But just consider what the mind is able to do on its own without all the shit that we have described in the last couple episodes. It can do weird shit. It can provide you with a memory that your own father was in a Spin Doctors cover band, which is made up whole cloth and may have been a dream. But I remembered it for a very long time as something that really happened to me. And that's weird. And that was just my brain being weird. So that's something to consider, I think. So anyways, here's another big question from Canon. What the hell is the point of all this? Why even employ these bizarre, fucked up mind control techniques on soldiers? Well, here's, in his own words, why. He says, quote, "Why, the skeptics would ask, would anyone attempt to create a Manchurian candidate when the military services using entirely conventional means can create a Rambo?" I see his point.
But also, god damn it, I hate how what Rambo became. Go watch First Blood. You don't want to create Rambos.
Well, sure, but you get what he means. You can create a soldier who's willing to kill and die for his country without subjecting them to mind control. That's
correct.
That's what he's saying, basically. But he has a quote here that I thought I'd include. This is from the book No More Heroes, Madness in Psychiatry and War, by the historian Richard Gabriel. And here's what it says. "Modern warfare has become so lethal and so intense that only the already insane can endure it. Modern war requiring continuous combat will increase the degree of fatigue on the soldier to heretofore unknown levels. Physical fatigue, especially the lack of sleep, will increase the rate of psychiatric casualties enormously. Other factors, high rates of indirect fire, night fighting, lack of food, constant stress, large numbers of casualties, will ensure that the number of psychiatric casualties will reach disastrous proportions. And the number of casualties will overburden the medical structure to the point of collapse. The ability to treat psychiatric casualties will all but disappear. There will be no safe forward areas in which to treat soldiers debilitated by mental collapse. The technology of modern war has made such locations functionally obsolete. On the battlefields of the future, we will witness a true clash of ignorant armies ignorant of their own emotions and even of the reasons for which they fight. Soldiers on all sides will be reduced to fearless chemical automatons who fight simply because they can do nothing else. Once the chemical genie is out of the bottle, the full range of human mental and physical actions become targets for chemical control. Today, it is already possible by chemical or electrical stimulation to increase the aggression levels of the human being by stimulating the amygdala, a section of the brain known to control aggression and rage. Such human potential engineering is already a partial reality, and the necessary technical knowledge increases every day.
Now, just so that I can get this on the record for like a timestamp thing from my life, I'm writing down. This might be my last episode of the podcast because I just had a million, probably more than multi-million-dollar idea.
Okay. Okay.
Succession, but the army.
Okay.
And so I think I'm just gonna go ride that one and see if either I figure there's kind of two ways you can go with this. I can either take it for real and go to like BlackRock and they'd pay for it, or if I want to make an actual show, I'm sure HBO, Netflix will go for that somehow, so I think either in real life or on the silver screen, and by that I do mean the black screen of your TV, the black mirror, I think I'm my life just changed.
Okay, so let me get this straight. You're doing the James Cameron move of walking into the meeting room of all these executives and writing alien with a $sign at the end so it says aliens, but instead you're walking right up into the headquarters of Northrop Grumman, and you are you're walking into their meeting and you're writing in all capital letters on the whiteboard, Succession, but all the S's are $signs. We're going to do Succession shit to our people in the military.
Yeah, Succession for the military, I think is...
Because I've heard that they already do suck sessions in the military.
I have heard. I've heard of
but
this, yes.
Succession is a different thing altogether.
Yeah.
Cannon points out here that while Gabriel is talking about large-scale battle... no doubt this kind of soldier could be employed in covert operations as well. He describes this new kind of soldier of the future who is being groomed to become more brutal, like a knife. Quote, "The soldier of the future will not discern, he will merely do. He will not be a butcher, he will be the butcher's knife, a tool among tools, thoughtless and effective." So... basically, what we're saying is that these mind control techniques will make more efficient, more emotionally detached soldiers who you could then also just deploy in your assassinations or your covert ops, or place them behind enemy lines for whatever. You could do, I guess the idea is you could do whatever the fuck you wanted. And you could overcome this sort of psychiatric quote-unquote deficiency on the battlefield, whatever you want to call it.
Get rid of all that fucking sympathy and emotion and doubt and humanity.
That I think is the idea, yes.
Just a series of bones and muscles to commit war crimes. That's what we want.
Yeah. I mean, look, I know that you say that and a chill runs down my spine. But you say that in front of the right people, and you've got
they're hard.
dollar signs. They're hard as fuck.
They're hard as diamonds underneath that table. Ready to throw money
around. Yeah.
In a way that very few other things will do it for them anymore, because they have lost all semblance of everything.
Niall, 100% right. You couldn't have said it better, frankly.
They can't get hard unless there's 5-figure casualties.
Yes, exactly. Also, this is where I kind of started to meander a little bit mentally, because after hearing all this stuff, like I sort of mentioned earlier, you can sort of like re-examine some stuff in the world of weird and conspiracy and all that. And I don't want to get too carried away trying to recall just how many events this military portion can possibly describe. But the first one that comes to mind is Jimmy Shaver, who... that is the soldier who raped and murdered a child and was placed under the hypnotic care of Dr. Jolly West. So you'll remember Jolly West as the MK Ultra freak who killed elephants with LSD. That's his most famous thing. Shaver, after apparently committing this heinous act, he stumbles out of the scene with amnesia, just completely baffled and unable to recall what had happened to him and what he had done. And Shaver maintained his innocence, but under Jolly West's hypnosis, which it's still so fucking crazy to me that MK Ultra's strongest soldier, they're like, yeah, we gotta get him on the Jimmy Shaver case. That's just so ridiculous. But Shaver maintains his innocence the whole time, and then gets put under hypnosis by Jolly West. And when he's under hypnosis by Jolly West, he confesses to the murder. Now, I bring this up mainly to do the kind of thing Cannon does, which is, can we look at these known cases and see where it fits on the timeline and if it makes sense with what we know? Shaver, if we are to believe that he truly believed he was innocent, and then you also kind of take this paranoid route that the controllers takes, you could maybe look at this case as an early hypnotically controlled soldier, or maybe a fuck up of that. And, maybe the hypnosis went wrong, but then you can say, like, well, was his self-proclaimed innocence a screen memory somehow? Or was it wiped time from his mind? I don't want to, like, again, I don't want to plant a flag on this idea or anything, but this is the kind of story that I'm, like, I started, like, thinking about, and, like, Jesus Christ, like, the more I learn about this era of stuff and all the weird possibilities, the weirder that story becomes.
This is one of those things. I'm just gonna look. Tonight is the night, since we're looking back on the days of yore. That these kind of large scale paranoid things are just going to kind of come out.
Yeah.
You look at a lot of I think probably more than is necessary about the role of propaganda in our culture, and just how much it has been normalized successfully. Like, it is some of the most successful marketing that's ever been. Like, the Coke Bear has nothing on the police procedural. So and one of those things that you get is, like, you get the kind of thing where someone is if their story is crazy, then they're lying and they're untrustworthy, and you can't take anything they say seriously, and, like, this kind of this victimization of the mentally ill, and like, sometimes there are people that will be like, oh, but he doesn't know what he's doing and you got to save him, or like, what, but like, largely the stuff you're talking about here, you could look at a lot of the way that we treat mentally ill people in TV shows and police procedurals, and with cops in general, the ways that we talk about them as a part of a smokescreen to cover up the, like, breaking of, like, to sow more, not it that it's intentionally a 100% a smokescreen, but, like, fostering the distrust of people whose stories don't track with reality is a good thing when those blanket memories don't always work 100%. Like, yeah, there's just this little tickle in my brain where it's like, we are so poised to laugh at people having mental health situations, or to freak out and harangue them and everything, and, like, remember the woman that like hallucinated on a plane a couple months ago and was, like, saying everyone in it was demons and shit? Do you remember this?
Yeah, vaguely I remember this. Yeah,
the reason it's vague is because it no one remember, like, no one talks about it anymore. The story cycle lasted about 2 weeks. Everyone got their jokes in and we moved on. I'm not saying this woman is innocent in any way, shape, or form. I don't know anything about her, but the way that people were so quick to just, like, turn it into a joke sometimes worries me in the way that we've been conditioned to not treat any of these things with any level of sincerity,
Yeah, I follow what you're saying. I do. The other thing that and it's too big to really broach here, but I would like to someday, is I would love to apply what we've learned and what we will continue to learn about how like, these weird manipulative covert tactics, like, which, we talk a lot about how it affects individuals, but these, it wouldn't be a far leap to say that the people behind doing something like that would want to see if they could do it on a wide scale. Yeah. And so I would really love to reapply a lot of what I've learned through this on and turn it on to just the internet itself. Because the internet feels like, okay, think about the fact that this guy gets shown horrible imagery of death and violence and all that to turn them into a, obviously this isn't me saying that story is, like, guaranteed to be true. It's just, like, it's a story here, but, like,
we're dealing in the world of thought experiments here.
When you're online, I think like you are subjected to some of the most heinous content. like even like you don't have to be looking for it. I remember a day where I was on, maybe Twitter, and it was just like, for whatever reason, I don't want to describe what I saw, but just stuff had gone viral enough, and there was just uncensored gore on my fucking timeline. Or you just think about how there's a constant, just a constant stream of images of the horrific violence being perpetrated on Gaza.
There's all of that. Also, the number of times I saw the arterial spray of Charlie Kirk's neck over the course of half an hour after his death.
I didn't seek that out. That was just there. I happened to run across
I saw like
that
4 different angles immediately.
Yeah, it's like, okay. And I'm not saying that this material is like an MK Ultra, the contemporary MK Ultra agent, like, behind the computer, I'm going to post the Charlie Kirk video. I am saying that sort of like how we've learned to become our own private cops to each other.
Yep.
We have also kind of learned, we have been coaxed into becoming our own MK Ultra experimenters on each other,
and especially like with when you think about with social media, the amount of bot farms on social media, Twitter is the worst. Like Twitter is at this point probably over, I don't know, I forget what number I saw, but it was like an alarming percentage of the active user base on Twitter at any given time is bots, and it like there is this kind of vibe where you're gonna see this stuff, and the stuff they're putting out there, it may not be as, like, what I'm getting at is there doesn't have to be a 120 point plan that is like this super satisfying, like Ocean's 11, everything was pre-planned, everything falls perfectly into place. A lot of it is just feels like it's more nowadays is this kind of shotgun blast to try to like keep people like just inundated with stuff.
Horror,
horror, confusion,
stuff, but horror,
uncertainty, like it's just this like shotgun spray of just awfulness that if you consume, even like going out into the world, like advertising is now fucking on everything, and you get screens like there's now are just like trucks that drive around with full LED screens just showing ads, and that's just what they do. Like it's not for anything else as far as I can tell. They're just driving billboards, which is anyway. We're inundated with shit constantly, and it has to have an effect on your brain.
100%. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. And I realize it's very like I'm being intentionally wild by saying this. I'm not coming up with the right words, but
both of us are gonna sound like paranoid people on this episode, and that's okay. It happens.
Well, but like, and I think that, like, again, the internet as an MK Ultra op is like an episode that I would like to do someday.
Sure.
But you can't say that without it sounding like you're saying like, oh, the internet is just like an MK Ultra sub project that whatever. You can't. I just think it ultimately has served to accomplish goals that were present back during the time of MK Ultra as we know it. And so I'll say it again, we live in MK Ultra world. Again, I realize that's wild, but I think it is sort of in a way true. Anyways.
Yeah. Look, I thought I was going to have the biggest take on this podcast, but you just I think we both are kind of arms racing each other.
Someday I will granularly unpack what I mean by that, but hopefully it imparts meaning to people who know where I'm coming from. To the people who don't know where I'm coming from, just go back and listen to our back catalog of 400 some episodes.
Just go back to episode 1 and start over, and you'll figure it out by another lap around.
So Cannon goes on to say, a prototype of the future warrior may already be with us. Did I read this already? No. The Navy SEAL I interviewed spoke in horrifying detail of dismemberment without emotion, of rape as routine, of killing without affect, and then forgetting that he has even killed. Even years later, he could not recall the stories behind many of the wounds on his own body. He claims that whenever he would need the services of the Veterans Hospital, doctors would re-hypnotize him shortly after his admission, while a physician specifically cleared for such work would examine his medical history, which was highly classified and kept under lock and key. So the remaining stuff in the controllers, it involves examinations of some UFO stories and other similar things, but through this, MK Ultra military mind control lens. So this is going to be some of it's stuff you already know. He goes on a whole thing about Betty and Barney Hill, which makes perfect sense. We've kind of talked about, we had a re-examination episode about them. There's good evidence to suggest that Betty Hill was like, they were activists, right? And they were targeted probably for their what would have been deemed subversive activities. And, he gets into a whole side thing with them. The other stories that he's bringing are very new to us. I do want to talk about two of these stories and omit some of the others, but we'll get to that. But I want to talk about two of them because they kind of stand on their own and are, they're illustrative of stuff that he's been talking about. So first of all, he tells this story about where Bud Hopkins, I guess, was at this thing called the UFO Abductions Workshop for the Whole Life Expo in Los Angeles in 1988. And Cannon pulls out a particularly tantalizing detail in this UFO abduction case that Hopkins was talking about. So this person who's talking to Hopkins about their ordeal, apparently somewhere along in this story, this abductee is just given a gun by the aliens. This is something I'd never heard of before in an abduction case. I don't know if you remember anything like that.
That's a new one.
But not like an alien, just like a fucking,
just like a
gun,
a
handgun,
human gun. Okay.
And then the abductee was also given a person that they were supposed to shoot. And this was not an alien that they were being directed towards, but just a human being who was tied to a chair. And these aliens told the abductee that this human that they had captive had done, quote, evil on Earth, and he's a bad person. You have to kill him.
Oh my God, they fucking treadstoned his ass. This the amount that this is Jason Bourne with aliens. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Like the final test for Treadstone is there's a guy tied to a chair with a bag over his head, and you have to kill him without remorse.
Wow.
And they just say he's probably done something bad, but you don't need to know that. Kill him. And that is anyway. Go ahead.
Well, so these aliens apparently tell the abductee that if he doesn't shoot and kill this person, they're not going to let him ever leave the ship. And so the abductee watches as this this person, I guess I don't know if they're a man, they just describe them as a human. Or no, they do say he, sorry. This man, I guess, says that he's innocent and please spare me, don't shoot me. And the abductee is dealing with all this and just freaking out. Mm-hmm. Which, I would too. But also, there's a little thing here where Cannon says, worth noting, he seems to have at least considered the alien's request to shoot someone he had never met. But ultimately, this person takes the gun and points it at the aliens and says to them, nobody's going to get shot here. And so from Hopkins's telling of the story, the aliens then said to this abductee, fine, very good. And they take the gun away from him. And then this man that was tied up, he just gets up, walks away, and disappears. And then they move on to the next part of the abduction story. And Cannon says, this sounds like a staged drama.
Yeah.
So this is obviously pretty wild, and Cannon notes that it doesn't really congeal with the skeptical nor the Bud Hopkins believer handbook of abduction cases. I would tend to agree with that because, like I said, I don't really recall many alien abduction scenarios that sound like this.
Yeah.
But what it does sound like to canon is a similar thing, an experiment conducted by Ludwig Meyer, a German hypnosis researcher, a prominent one. So here's that experiment described in the book. I gave a revolver to an elderly and readily suggestible man whom I had just hypnotized. The revolver had just been loaded by Mr. H with a percussion cap. I explained to the subject, while pointing to Mr. H, that Mr. H was a very wicked man whom he should shoot to kill. With great determination, he took the revolver and fired a shot directly at Mr. H. Mr. H fell down, pretending to be wounded. I then explained to my subject that the fellow was not yet quite dead, and that he should give him another bullet, which he did without further ado.
Okay.
So, basically, this whole thing is him saying, that sounds remarkably similar to this hypnosis researcher's experiment with, anti-social behaviors being coerced on somebody through hypnosis. And what does that mean for this story that Bud Hopkins has recounted? That's basically what he's saying.
Yeah, sure.
Now, to add to this, canon relates more stories that he's heard from abductees, including one that was not coaxed out through hypnotic regression. So the one we just talked about was from hypnosis.
I can say one thing about Bud Hopkins. If nothing else, he proved that it is more interesting if you put aliens in it.
That is kind of true, yeah. That is very true. So canon says that he had another similar story that was told to him by an abductee who had not undergone this same hypnosis stuff to coax out the story. Canon claims that this woman told him that during her experience, she was handed a gun in a Ziploc bag by her abductors, and she was told that she would have to use this weapon, quote, on a job. She recited a cue that had been drilled into her mind by what she referred to as the quote-unquote entities, which was this: when you see the light, do it tonight. This would be followed by a command, which is just one word: execute. Canon says that this abductee told him how she is typically averse to guns, just like guns are not her thing.
Yeah.
But since her encounter, in her everyday life, she will occasionally get a, quote, uncharacteristic yet overpowering urge to be near a gun, a quasi-sexual desire to pick one up and touch the metal.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. You'll recall also that MKUltra's scope goes beyond just interrogation techniques. They seem to want to test the ability to mind control somebody into becoming a true Manchurian candidate, a programmed assassin.
Yeah.
So Cannon concludes here and says this: it isn't difficult to imagine the media's reaction if a public figure were murdered by someone acting at the behest of the Space Brothers. Who would dare to speak of conspiracy under such circumstances? The hidden controllers could choose a myth structure that conforms to the abductee's personality, then pose as higher beings who would whisper violence into the ear of the percipient.
Yeah, like, I still don't know how far hypnosis can actually take you.
Yeah.
But it's a hell of a plan.
Yeah. He also brings up this thing where he's talking to abductees in the California area who talk about being abducted by human beings. Specifically, they get abducted by a man that they refer to as the Doctor. And
Doctor Who?
I knew you were going to say that. This Doctor does not sound quite as fun as
a little more
the
Mengele
science fiction one. But basically, they all describe the same physical details of this man who is a doctor who has taken them. And there's and I guess some of these people were in a Los Angeles-based UFO group, and they're all recounting abductions by the same quote-unquote doctor.
Okay.
And he also points out that like none of these people had really met each other, but they all described the same thing. And he says this: one of the abductees I have dealt with insisted, under hypnosis, that her abduction experience brought her to a certain house in the Los Angeles area. She was able to provide directions to the house, even though she had no conscious memory of ever being there. I later learned that this house is indeed occupied by a scientist who formerly, and perhaps currently, conducted clandestine research on mind control technology. This same abductee described a clandestine brain operation of some sort she underwent in childhood. The neurosurgeon was a human being, not an alien. She even recalled the name. When I heard the name, it meant nothing to me, but later I learned that there really was a scientist of that name who specialized in electrode implant research. Now, to be clear, the scientist in Los Angeles that he was talking about earlier, plus the neurosurgeon that I just mentioned, two different people.
Okay.
But he's just pointing out these weird. Basically, he's saying, did the abduction by a doctor, because there's more to it, but did the abduction by this doctor figure result from improper screen memory placing? Like, did they fail to actually turn the doctor into an alien in the mind of the hypnotized subject? That's kind of what he's driving at.
Yeah, it didn't stick. Sure, gotcha.
Yeah. Now, before we completely wrap up the discussion of the controllers, I just want to add something real quick, because this is a very infamous text. There's a lot of people. I already saw we had a number of comments from people on the first two episodes in various places. So I just want to say something. I know I'm skipping over lots of stories at the end here. There's a whole section about cults. We'll talk about that in another episode. There's a bunch of stories I will discuss with you, Niall, someday.
Sure.
Jenny Randall's, Guy Ballard's I Am Activity, Candy Jones, and so on. So all these big stories that he brings up towards the end here, I read all of it. I'm well aware of it. I have plans to talk about all of these things in the future. They're very interesting, especially I Am Activity. That shit's crazy. So be patient. We will eventually get to all this stuff. I'm just anticipating people because again,
yeah, we didn't want to make this into a 2-month.
No, I did not want to do.
You know,
no. Yeah, this has been one of those things where if I didn't consciously decide a cutoff, we'd have gone on way too long, which, like, that's not a bad thing for other podcasts, but I really like this thing where we take a big thing like the controllers and then all the illustrative side stories and things that branch off from it, we can then do them later and then just like point back to this 3-part series. It's
Look,
the same.
We like to shake up the feed, you know?
Yeah, this is the same plan I have for like the history of like clandestine like spook bullshit that I've been quietly reading about for like a year now. So anyways, this is a pretty deep dive into the actual text though, honestly, at the end of the day. But I want to spend a little time talking about the actual man, Martin Cannon. Okay. You can learn a lot about this guy. Like I'd previously mentioned, I'd spent some time listening to him in interviews. He sort of disappeared for the most part over the last 2+ decades, and then he resurfaces around 2022 and he starts talking with people again, and he's getting all these interviews and promoting his new book, which I'll just briefly mention. He has a book that came out like a couple years ago in 2022 called The Child Stealers, Phantom Social Workers, and American Mystery.
Oh God! Okay,
which is such a crazy, like, that's a thing that he was investigating.
That paints a fucking picture. Okay,
yes, it does. It's exactly what it sounds like. Social workers who aren't actually social workers taking children. I haven't read that book, but I know it's out there. I don't know if I want to read that book. That sounds awful. But that's something that he wrote about. I think he also had another book. I don't know what happened to this, but he had another book that was, I think he was planning on publishing, but I don't think got published. That was going to be more, I want to say, MK Ultra and CIA stuff that he had researched, but he dropped it, I think, or it just didn't happen. I don't really know. I saw all these interviews and stuff, and I think we could get Martin Cannon on the show. Let me just say that I'm going to reach out to him. I want to see if he'd be willing to, because I would want to ask him so many things, and he would just talk for for hours based on what I've seen from him. So we'd get a couple episodes out of him. He's really interesting. So if you're interested in all the stuff we've been talking about, just look him up. There's interviews on YouTube. Hours and hours of him talking about his life, his encounters with researchers in the world of Forteana, his discussions that he's had with abductees and other writers and researchers in the field, ufologists, whatever. Lots of stories, very fun to listen to. I don't want to go too deep onto his actual personal life, but I will admit I found the description that he had in one of the interviews a little funny, because he compares his family life and dynamic to characters from The Big Bang Theory.
Okay.
But his father was an engineer who contributed to the space program. And I guess, like, it sounds like he had a lasting impact on Martin Cannon.
Okay.
But yeah, an engineer father who died really young, at the age of 36. And then Cannon, he also gets into the complexity of, let's call it complexity, of his life with his stepfather. So that's all out there if you want to read about it. But something he'll talk about is how the controllers invoked the wrath of lots of people in the field. His presence pissed people off. Folks apparently hated him. Ufologists hate him. One weird trick to expose the truth of the human hypothesis
say
of
it's
UFO
all the CIA?
abductions. Yeah. But I wanted to highlight a story that I thought was interesting that I found, and it's sort of exemplary of what he's referring to when he talks about people in the field hating him and the trouble he got into. I found a story where Cannon recorded a threatening voicemail that he'd received in 1993, and there is a pretty obscure interview from 2009 where he plays this voicemail over the interview, and I listened to it.
Wow.
In the call, a woman says, quote, "Martin, as an ex-friend, I have to warn you. John and Hal are really pissed off at you, and they've given the matter over to Gordon to handle. Watch out." So I'm going to unpack this for you, and when I reveal who these names are likely in reference to, you're going to it's great. So it's not great, but it's fascinating. So Cannon identifies the woman's voice as Victoria Alexander. She is the wife of a man named Colonel John Alexander, who I do believe I'd seen him a number of times before in looking stuff up for episodes. But allow me to briefly explain John Alexander. I found the blog of a researcher named George Hansen, also really interesting stuff. But here's what he wrote about the connections here. In the early 1990s, Jones publicly proclaimed that he, quote, honestly did not know of any activity of the U.S. government in the field of UFOs. To be clear, this guy was ex-military, retired, and became heavily involved in UFOs and other weird subjects. He goes on to say, in 1992, Robert J. Durant produced a detailed, widely circulated white paper demonstrating that Jones was in a position to throw considerable light on government UFO activities. Colonel John Alexander was heavily involved with the U.S. government's psychic spying program, but he was also active with UFOs. In fact, Alexander admitted that he was the model for the Harold Phillips character in Howard Blum's book Out There, The Government's Secret Quest for Extraterrestrials. Alexander has some unusual connections, such as the person of Gordon Novel. Gordon, who is mentioned in the threatening phone call. Gordon will take care of it.
Yeah.
Gordon Novel, an exceptionally colorful character. Novel was somehow able to evade the extradition attempts of prosecutor Jim Garrison during his investigation of the Kennedy assassination.
Oh.
And my understanding is that Novell had told, I think, Jim Garrison at one point that he was a CIA agent and that he knew some interesting people associated with the assassination. It goes on. Garrison concluded that Novell's intelligence associates were protecting him. Whatever the truth of the matter, other peculiarities in his background are disturbing. Novell was convicted of illegally transporting electronic surveillance equipment in Nevada. Later in Georgia, he pleaded guilty to illegal possession of firearms. After being charged with firebombing in Louisiana, he jumped bail, but after recapture, his trial ended in a hung jury. Alexander has spent some time with Novell and has flaunted the affiliation, perhaps in an attempt to intimidate others. Cannon was aware of Alexander's interest in UFO abductions and of Novell's background. He was quite alarmed, and the day he received the message, he called and played me the tape. I suggested that he alert a number of people in the media, and he also notified the FBI. So, this Gordon Novell character mentioned in the voicemail, one of the people who's pissed off at Cannon, very shady, very bizarre track record. One that we will have to save when we finally decide to take a leap into the JFK assassination conspiracy shit. Cannon, here's the other one that you will recognize. Maybe you won't remember specifics, but you will recognize this name. Cannon also believes that the Hal mentioned in the threatening phone call, one of the 3 pissed off guys, is Hal Puthoff. This is another one of John Alexander and Gordon Novell's buddies, which I have seen multiple pictures of John Alexander, Gordon Novell, and Hal Puthoff. All 3 of these guys hanging out, getting dinner together, doing, the speaking circuit, whatever.
Wearing a big pair of pants together. Yeah.
Yes. You will remember Hal Puthoff as one of the Scientologist weirdo guys who did all the CIA-funded psychic research into the abilities of con man Uri Geller, who Puthoff was like a diehard Geller fan, as if I remember correctly. He believed in his abilities.
Yes.
But remember, we also kind of were like, is this some sort of weird Scientology slush fund that happened incidentally?
Yeah, it's easy to just say, he was this diehard Uri Geller guy, but the reality could be so much more complicated and weirder. It's
yeah, and so John Alexander, pretty controversial guy, and all 3 of these dudes were apparently pissed off at Martin Cannon over his work. Like Cannon, the way the story is told, it sounds like Cannon's like, I don't know what I did. But he gets this phone call where these people are apparently mad at him for this or that reason. This is another thing where, like, because he's resurfaced, I would love to hear Martin, if he's willing to talk about this incident, what he thinks happened. So, anyways, this is, once again, I feel like I really only scratched the surface of all of this. I have something like 100 new threads to pull on from doing this. My podcast bookmarks folder is fit to bursting.
Yeah, you need to start weeding some of that stuff out.
I began making subfolders in here, like, here's this person, here's this story, here's this thing, and each of those have a dozen bookmarks. So we're all in all, at the end of the day, I kind of said this already, I don't really know what to do with all this, really. Like, I sort of mentioned, Cannon really tries to distance himself from this work now, and who can really blame him? We've established the pain point of people with maybe mental illness getting a hold of this text, and it legitimizes, maybe some sort of delusional belief. He may have been threatened by fucking CIA affiliated, Scientologists and a JFK assassin guy, and
he might have angered some big dogs.
Yeah, ufology people hate him because of what he's saying for, obvious reasons. It just runs counter to the extraterrestrial hypothesis. And the paranoid side of me just sort of wonders if he at some point got scared off from some of this work. I'm not certain of that. That's total conjecture. But even in the book itself, Cannon wraps things up by explicitly saying that he does not, quote, insist dogmatically on any of it, and all he really hopes for is a, quote-unquote, fair hearing of his hypothesis. So, did he get a fair hearing? I don't know. It looks like maybe not, especially at the time, and I am not coming away convinced that all of this is, totally true, but I think it's really interesting speculation. Some of it makes an eerie amount of sense. Some of it feels a little too wild. I'm not totally sure what to do with it, so I'll just leave you with the slightly corny but charming final words of the controllers, which are this. A mind is a terrible thing to waste, and a worse thing to commandeer.
Hey, fucked up if true.
True. Fucked up if true. Hey, Martin, this one's to you. I'm raising my glass. Fucked up if true, man. Niall and I are both raising our glasses, and we're toasting through our webcams, and we're gonna take a big sippy. So Niall,
oh yeah,
that's
that
the
hits.
Controllers with Martin Cannon.
Yeah, what a fucking odyssey. I mean,
crazy.
like, it's one of those things that we've orbited around concepts of this as we've delved deeper into the world of UFOs. So it's nice to hear like a full-blown someone who did the damn thing and put some research in and made like a theory, you know? Like,
Yeah.
It's cool to find someone who has traveled this way before.
Yeah, and I think that me and Martin Cannon would have some disagreements about certain things, but I think generally he's approaching this in a somewhat rational way, and then also letting the paranoia creep in a lot of places too. Which is interesting, and I kind of appreciate that in its own right. And you know, there was another. I saw more than one comment about this in a couple different places, but I am aware that he's not the only one who's done this research. I have sitting on the stand next to where I sleep. Helmut Lammer's MILAB's military abductions book, which somebody was pointing out that, like Cannon, this Helmut Lammer did this research and published this book, and then fucked off and maybe was spooked out of the field. So, you know, I'm aware that there's other stuff here, but this was a story that I have been planning on doing for years now. I've known about this for a long time, and I'm glad that we finally got to do it.
Yeah.
There will be others, I guess is what I'm saying. There will definitely be others, and I will follow up on the stories in the Controllers because those are also super interesting. I just didn't have time to fit it into 3 parts. That's all.
Yeah. We had too much to cover. It happens.
So, Niall, all that being said, are you ready for a big question?
By golly, I hope so.
Okay. If anybody, dead or alive, from the history of ufology would be most likely to leave you an angry or threatening voicemail, who do you think it would be and why?
Honestly, if they had access to the Patreon, I think someone in the duo of Richard Hoagland and Mike Barra would probably have some things to say to me if I were to just, because like they both take their things incredibly seriously, and I got very, very fascinated. And like there's a Patreon, so for people who don't know, I read an entire one of their I read Mission to Mars, and did a whole series of podcast episodes about it, and I bought. Dark Mission is the one that I read. Mission to Mars, I think, is the first book, and I own that one too, and I'm going to read it. I spent a lot of time with Richard Hoagland and Mike Barra, and think they're both kind of petty, kind of,
yeah.
There's so many points in reading. The one fun thing about reading these books that you written by these people that we do episodes about is you learn a lot more about their temperaments and like what is important to them. There's so much just like NASA was mean to me in Dark Mission. It's one of my favorite recurring things where it's like, and NASA just wouldn't, they specifically sent their spokesperson out there to basically subtweet me on screen. It's like, no.
It's awesome that you're so incensed about that you put it into a book forever.
Yeah. And so I think that probably if I were to catch strays, it would be from actually, someone in that duo.
I completely agree with that assessment, actually. That's very funny. You know, I have trouble answering this question myself. But But then I realized that some of the most shit talking I think I did was the Stargate stuff with Uri Geller and Puthoff and Russell Targ and Ingo Swann and all that. I think it honestly it would probably be Uri Geller.
Yeah.
Because I talked a lot of shit. And I think I openly expressed that I kind of fucking hate him.
Yeah.
And
it's pretty easy to do.
He's apparently a litigious. And I think I talked about that story about how he got the Pokemon card Kadabra, I want to say.
Yeah.
Because I think in Japan, Abra, Kadabra, and Alakazam, the Pokemon evolutionary line, all three of them in the Japanese are named after famous magicians, and Kadabra I think is named after Uri Geller, and Geller sued them over it, and the Pokemon basically Kadabra was not a Pokemon card that you could get in the game for I want to say like more than a decade because of that lawsuit. My point is, Uri Geller's a fucking dick. And I'm saying that on my comedy podcast where we are protected by the angelic force of this is satire. So, he can't actually do anything about me saying that.
The tee-hee clause.
The tee-hee clause, yeah. So, but I do think that, like, if Uri Geller ever caught a whiff of the shit I said about him on this show, I'd probably get a nasty voicemail.
Yeah.
That story is so wild to me. If it's
really
another
is.
one of those things where like you hear it and you're like, I don't know if that's true, but if all of those people are actually like pissed off at him and they're, having this guy's wife leave him a voicemail about how they're pissed off, that's fucking crazy. What the hell happened there?
Yeah, what caused that? Yeah.
Hard to say. I don't really know. Anyways, there's so much more to talk about, and I will keep working at it, folks. That's my promise to you.
All right. Well, do you want to take care of some business?
Sure, let's do it.
All right. So if you want to follow us on social media, we're on Twitter at IGW Podcast.
We're on Facebook.com/ItGetsWeirdPodcast.
And we're on all your favorite podcatchers. If you listen to podcasts somewhere, look up It Gets Weird, and we're almost certainly there.
We are on Blue Sky at It Gets Weird. We are on twitch.tv/ItGetsWeird. I'm planning on getting some games in as the winter encroaches. I can't remember if I already announced this, but my next gaming attempt on top of doing the finishing up this Nuzlocke, this Fire Red Nuzlocke with friend of the show Colin, I'm going to attempt to beat on stream Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8 because I anticipate getting into the new Resident Evil when it comes out next year. So go ahead and follow us on twitch.tv/ItGetsWeird to check that out. That'll be a lot of fun. I know nobody out there's fucking going outside. Just stay in and watch a fun stream. Get a cup of hot cocoa and a blanket and watch me get murdered by zombies. If you want to email us and send us a cool story, like the one we read up front from this episode, itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com is the place to go. Send it there. Let us know how we should address you, and then send us some sort of cool story. Let us know if we can read your story on the show. Send us, it doesn't have to be a story, but stories are fun. Thoughts and feelings on a particular episode, or maybe there's something we missed, let us know. And shoot it on over to itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com. Finally, if you want to support us, and I know you do, you got maybe Graham is like, oh, here's a crisp $50 bill. Do you know how many months of the Patreon that gets you here at It Gets Weird?
10. You're asking me 10?
Well,
yeah,
no, it's
10.
like 10. It's 10.
It's pretty easy math.
That's a maximum. So look, Graham is giving you some holiday money or something, or maybe she gave you a Patreon gift card. I don't know if such a thing exists.
You can give Patreon subscriptions as gifts. I do know this.
That's true. That is true.
So
Here's the thing. Patreon.com/ItGetsWeird. We have a $1 tier, a $2 tier, and a $5 tier. The $1 tier is the tip tier. You get the satisfaction of supporting, giving a tip, leaving $1 in the tip jar of your favorite podcast, It Gets Weird. But For just $1 more, you get bonus content. $2 tier gets, I almost said World of Weird. It gets Weird TV, where Niall and I talk about weird television. We are in the middle of the third season of The X-Files. And we both love The X-Files. It's been great. People also get to vote on what weird television we watch next. Maybe it'll be more X-Files. Maybe it'll be a completely different show. We've tried to get people to vote for Kolchak the Night Stalker for a really long time now, and maybe...
Yeah, it's kind of a dark horse candidate.
Yeah, maybe you'll be the Patreon donor who finally influences that decision.
I think we honestly have to skew our audience older if we ever want to watch Kolchak.
That's probably true.
We keep getting all, like, Tumblr and social media in general are keeping X-Files alive in the cultural consciousness. And Columbo is still around for young people, but Kolchak from the similar era.
We gotta start doing some Columbo shit to Kolchak, I think.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
But that's at the $2 tier. But if you want the maximum amount of bonus content, you're going to want to go to that $5 tier, where in the off weeks of It Gets Weird TV, Niall and I have World of Weird. We talk about whatever we want. Usually it's our long... If you have loved our long diversions into just personal thoughts and feelings on movies and music and just the world and even just some, extra details on... main feed episodes, that's the World of Weird. We talk about whatever the hell we want, and it's a lot of fun. Whether you donate to the $2 tier or the $5 tier, you get access to the main show 2 days early on Friday instead of Sunday, and you get access to the Discord where we're hanging out chatting with our listeners just like you about Bigfoot, about all kinds of shit, conspiracies, UFOs, fake medicine, woo-woo, music, wrestling, anime, comics, all kinds of shit. Politics. We did open up a politics channel that I need to figure out how to quarantine for people who don't want to look at it. But it's been very civil in there. So, look, we have great listeners, is the fact of the matter. So
the community's great.
Community's great. And so I guess that's going to let me transition to a big thank you that we feel we got to do every once in a while. Thank you all so much for listening to the show. Thank you all so much for supporting us over the years. We are here because of you. We don't advertise. We don't make money off of advertising. Everything that we've been able to do with the show, including improving our setup, allowing us to have a remote setup, that's all because people listened to the show and decided they wanted to give us a couple bucks. So if people can keep doing that, then we will keep trying to improve the show. So thank you all once again. Hope everybody has a great holiday season.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for continuing to support the show. This has been It Gets Weird, and I've been Niall.
And I'm Kyle, signing out.
Peace.